The morning alarm echoed through the metal halls of Nexus Prime Station. Marcus Chen opened his eyes and looked at the ceiling of his small room. He had been at the Galactic Military Academy for 3 months now. Every day still felt strange. Marcus rolled out of his narrow bed and put on his cadet uniform. The dark blue fabric felt rough against his skin. He looked at himself in the mirror. At 20 years old, he was one of only 12 humans in the entire academy. Most days, he felt like everyone was watching him. The academy held cadets from 17 different alien species. There were the tall, thin Zenthari with their 4 arms, the rock-like Vextai who barely spoke, the furry Rillan who always traveled in groups, and the Corvani, the large reptile people who seemed to hate everyone who was not like them. Marcus walked through the corridors toward Formation Hall. Other cadets moved past him. Some nodded. Others just stared. He had learned that humans were considered a new species in the galaxy. Most aliens had never seen one before. The Formation Hall was huge. It could hold 1,000 cadets easily. Today only 200 were present for morning inspection. Marcus took his place in the human section. The other 11 humans stood in a straight line next to him. Attention! The voice boomed across the hall. All the cadets snapped to attention. Their backs were straight, their eyes forward. Marcus had practiced this movement hundreds of times. Commander Thexvar entered the hall. He was massive, even for a Corvani. His green and brown scales caught the light as he moved. His yellow eyes scanned the rows of cadets like a predator looking for weakness. Metal armor covered his arms and chest. Each piece was polished to shine like a mirror. The commander had been at the academy for 15 years. Everyone knew his story. His home planet had been destroyed in a war. He had fought his way up through the ranks. He was known for being hard on cadets, especially cadets from species he thought were weak. Commander Thexvar walked slowly down the first row. His heavy boots made loud sounds on the metal floor. Marcus could hear other cadets breathing harder when the commander passed them. "Today we practice combat formations," the commander announced. His voice was deep and rough. "You will learn how real soldiers move in battle." The commander stopped at the Zenthari section. He pointed at one cadet. "You, step forward 3 paces." The Zenthari cadet moved quickly. His forearms stayed at his sides. "Good," the commander said. "You understand orders?" He moved to the Vextai section. The rock-like being stood perfectly still. The commander nodded with approval. Then he reached the human section. Marcus felt the commander's yellow eyes on him. The reptilian face showed no emotion, but Marcus could sense the dislike. It rolled off the commander like heat from a fire. "Humans," the commander said slowly. "The newest members of our academy. Some say you are clever. Others say you are weak. Today we will see which is true." The commander pointed directly at Marcus. "You. Step forward for demonstration." Marcus moved forward 3 steps. He kept his back straight and his eyes ahead. The other cadets watched in silence. "Combat formation requires speed," the commander explained to the group. "When I give the order, you must move immediately. No thinking. No hesitation. Action." The commander turned back to Marcus. "Step forward 2 more paces." Marcus took 2 steps forward. "Now step back to your original position quickly." Marcus began to move backward, but he moved at normal speed, not rushing. The commander's eyes flashed with anger. "I said quickly, human." Marcus reached his position and stood at attention again. "Yes, sir." "That was not quick enough," the commander growled. "In battle, slow movement means death." "Your death. Your team's death." Marcus said nothing. He kept his eyes forward. The commander stepped closer. He was now only an arm's length away from Marcus. His huge form cast a shadow over the human cadet. "Perhaps you do not understand the seriousness of military training," the commander said. His voice was getting louder. "Perhaps your species thinks this is a game." "No, sir," Marcus replied calmly. "No?" The commander leaned down until his reptilian face was level with Marcus's. "Then why do you move like you are walking through a park?" The other cadets watched without moving. This kind of confrontation happened sometimes. Usually the cadet would apologize and promise to do better. Most species understood that showing submission to a superior officer was the smart choice. Marcus looked directly into the commander's yellow eyes. "I moved as fast as was safe, sir. Better to arrive alive than to fall down rushing." The silence in the hall became complete. Even the air circulation system seemed quieter. Commander Thexvar's face changed. His scales seemed to darken. His hands clenched into fists. "Safe," he hissed. "You think about safety when I give orders?" "I think about completing the mission, sir." The commander's right hand moved so fast that most cadets did not see it coming. His armored gauntlet struck Marcus across the left side of his face with tremendous force. The sound echoed through the formation hall like a gunshot. Marcus staggered sideways. Pain exploded through his skull. He tasted blood immediately. His left cheek felt like it was on fire. But he did not fall down. The cadets from other species gasped. In Corvani culture, striking someone across the face was a serious insult. It meant the person being hit was considered lower than dirt. It was meant to show complete dominance. Marcus straightened up slowly. Blood ran from his split lip down his chin. His left cheek was already starting to swell. But his eyes never left the commander's face. The hall waited. According to galactic military tradition, Marcus now had two choices. He could submit completely and beg for forgiveness, or he could issue a formal challenge for combat. Most species would choose submission when facing a superior officer. Challenging a commander was almost always career suicide. Marcus reached up and wiped the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. He looked at the red stain on his skin. Then he looked back at Commander Thexvar, and Marcus smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was not a scared smile. It was the kind of smile that said, "I know something you do not know." The commander's yellow eyes widened slightly. This was not the reaction he expected. Marcus kept smiling as blood continued to drip from his lip. The silence stretched on. Every cadet in the hall held their breath. The commander raised his hand again, ready to strike a second time. But something in the human's expression made him pause. Marcus was not cowering. He was not angry. He was looking at the commander like he was seeing something interesting. The smile on Marcus's face grew wider. Commander Thexvar's hand trembled slightly in the air. For the first time in 15 years of military service, he was not sure what would happen next. Marcus wiped more blood from his mouth. He took one small step forward instead of backward. The commander's breathing became heavier. His scales darkened even more. But Marcus just kept smiling that strange, knowing smile. And in that moment, everything changed. 3 seconds passed after the strike. 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours to everyone in Formation Hall. Marcus Chen stood there with blood on his lip and that strange smile on his face. Commander Thexvar held his hand in the air, ready to hit again. But something had changed in those 3 seconds. The human was not acting like any species the commander had ever met. Marcus reached up and wiped more blood from his mouth. He looked at the red stain on his fingers. Then he looked directly at Commander Thexvar. "Sir, with respect," Marcus said in a calm, clear voice that carried across the silent hall. "Where I come from, that's considered foreplay." The commander's reptilian mouth fell open slightly. Several alien cadets made small gasping sounds. The Xanthari cadet's forearms twitched in surprise. Even the stone-like Vextai seemed to shift slightly. Marcus was still smiling. "You hit like my grandmother, and she's been dead for 10 years. Commander Thexvar's yellow eyes went wide. His scales turned an even darker shade of green. No one had ever spoken to him like this. No cadet had ever dared to mock him after being struck. The commander's hand was still raised in the air. His whole arm was shaking now, but not with strength. It was shaking with pure rage. "How dare you?" the commander whispered. Then louder, "How dare you?" Marcus did not step back. Instead, he took another small step forward. The movement brought him closer to the massive reptilian officer. "Go ahead, sir," Marcus said. His voice was steady and calm. "Hit me again, but understand something about humans first." The commander's breathing was getting heavier. Steam seemed to come from his nostrils. But Marcus kept talking. "We don't break the way you think we will. We adapt, we overcome, and we remember everything." The other human cadets were watching their fellow human with amazement. Sarah Mitchell, who stood 3 places down from Marcus, felt her back straighten without her meaning to. David Park at the end of the line stopped looking at the floor and raised his eyes. "You think hitting me makes you strong?" Marcus continued. "Where I come from, hitting someone who can't hit back just makes you a bully. And bullies are cowards with big fists." Commander Thexvar made a sound that was part growl, part hiss. His free hand clenched into a fist. The metal armor on his knuckles creaked. Marcus wiped his mouth again. More blood had appeared on his lip. "You want to know what real strength looks like, Commander? Real strength is taking a hit and laughing about it. Real strength is standing here and not being afraid of you. The human took another step forward. Now he was close enough that the commander had to look down to meet his eyes. Real strength, Marcus said quietly, is making the person who hit you wonder if they made a mistake. The commander's raised hand was shaking harder now, but it was not moving toward Marcus. The reptilian officer was staring at the human like he was seeing a new kind of creature for the first time. Because he was. Marcus turned slightly to address the other cadets in the hall. His voice carried easily in the silence. "My species has a saying," he announced. "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But we have another saying too." He looked back at the commander. What doesn't kill you probably wasn't trying hard enough. Some of the Rillan cadets made chittering sounds that might have been laughter. The Zenthari were moving their forearms in patterns that showed confusion and interest. Marcus faced Commander Thexvar directly again. "So here's my question, sir. Are you trying hard enough? Because from where I'm standing, this feels like a warm-up." The commander's mouth opened and closed without making sounds. In 15 years of military service, no one had ever challenged him like this. No one had ever taken a hit and asked for more while making jokes. "You think you're being clever, human?" the commander finally managed to say. Marcus shrugged. "I think I'm being honest. You hit me to show dominance. To make me afraid. To make me submit." He spread his arms wide. "How's that working out for you?" The question hung in the air like smoke, because everyone in the hall could see that it was not working. Marcus was not afraid. He was not submitting. If anything, he seemed more confident than before. "Let me tell you something about human psychology," Marcus continued. "We're weird. The more you try to break us, the more stubborn we get. The more you threaten us, the more we dig in our heels. And the more you hurt us," he smiled wider, "the more creative we get with our responses." Commander Thexvar's hand was still in the air, but now it looked frozen there. He could not seem to decide whether to hit Marcus again or lower it. "You want me to beg for mercy?" Marcus asked. "Not going to happen." "You want me to promise to be good?" "Also not happening." "You want me to fear you?" He shook his head. "Sir, I've been afraid of things that would give you nightmares." "You're just Tuesday." The other human cadets were starting to stand straighter now. Marcus's defiance was spreading to them like a fire catching in dry grass. They had all felt alone and outnumbered for months. But seeing one of their own refuse to be broken was changing something inside them. Sarah Mitchell lifted her chin. David Park squared his shoulders. Jennifer Lopez stopped trying to make herself look smaller. Marcus noticed the change in his fellow humans. He nodded at them slightly. "You see that, Commander?" Marcus asked. "That's what happens when you try to intimidate humans. We don't break. We don't scatter. We come together. We get stronger." The commander's breathing was very heavy now. His yellow eyes darted from Marcus to the other humans and back. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," the commander said through clenched teeth. Marcus laughed. It was a real laugh, not bitter or scared, just genuinely amused. "Actually, sir, I think you're the one who has no idea what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a species that survived ice ages and plagues and wars that lasted decades. You're dealing with a species that looks at impossible odds and says, 'Hold my beer.'" He stepped even closer to the commander. "You're dealing with humans, sir, and we're just getting started." The massive reptilian officer stared down at the small human who refused to be intimidated. For the first time in his career, Commander Thexvar felt something he had not experienced in years. Uncertainty. The tension in Formation Hall was thick enough to cut with a knife. Commander Thexvar still had his hand raised in the air. Marcus Chen still stood there with blood on his lip and that defiant smile. The other cadets watched without breathing. Then the main doors of the hall opened with a loud hiss. Admiral Kethara entered with 4 security guards behind her. She was Zenthari, which meant she had 4 arms and stood nearly 7 feet tall. Her blue skin had silver markings that showed her high rank. Every cadet in the academy knew who she was. She commanded the entire station. Her 4 arms were crossed in front of her chest. Marcus had learned that this meant a Zenthari was thinking very seriously about something. "Commander Thexvar," Admiral Kethara said. Her voice came through the translation device as perfectly clear standard language. "You may stand down. The test is complete." Commander Thexvar's raised hand froze in place. His yellow eyes moved from Marcus to the Admiral. "Admiral? What test?" "Lower your hand, Commander," the Admiral said calmly. "Step away from Cadet Chen." The commander's arm dropped to his side like it was made of lead. He took 2 steps backward but kept staring at Marcus with confusion and anger. Admiral Kethara walked across the hall. Her security guards spread out behind her. The metal floor rang under their feet with each step. Marcus remained at attention, but his eyes followed the Admiral's approach. His smile had faded, but he still did not look afraid. "Cadets," the Admiral announced, "what you have just witnessed was a psychological evaluation. A test that has been conducted at this academy for over 800 years. The alien cadets began to murmur among themselves. The Rillan made their chittering sounds. The Vextai moved their heavy stone bodies to get better views. Commander Thexvar's mouth opened. "Admiral, I was not informed of any test." "Because the test required your genuine reaction, Commander," Admiral Cathara replied. "If you had known it was a test, your behavior would not have been authentic." She turned to address all the cadets in the hall. "For 847 years, this academy has conducted the dominance response test. Every species that joins the Galactic Defense Corps must be evaluated. We must understand how they respond to authority, to pressure, to physical intimidation." The Admiral's forearms gestured as she spoke. "The test is simple. A superior officer creates a confrontation with a cadet. The officer uses physical dominance to establish control. Every species has responded in predictable ways." Marcus felt his stomach drop. This had all been planned. "The Corvani respond with submission or formal challenge," the Admiral continued. "The Zenthari negotiate for better terms. The Vextai become completely passive. The Rillan band together for group protection. Every species follows their nature." She stopped walking and looked directly at Marcus. "Until today." The silence returned to the hall. Everyone was looking at the human cadet with the split lip and swollen cheek. "Cadet Chen," the Admiral said, "in 847 years, no species has ever responded to the dominance test the way you just did." Marcus wiped his mouth again. The bleeding had mostly stopped. "How did I respond, Admiral?" "You reversed the power dynamic," she said simply. "Instead of being intimidated, you made your intimidator question himself. Instead of submission or aggression, you used humor and fearlessness to change the entire situation." Admiral Cathara began walking around Marcus like she was studying a new kind of machine. "Most species either break under pressure or fight back with anger. You did neither. You absorbed the pressure and redirected it. You took something meant to make you feel small and used it to make yourself appear larger." Commander Thexvar was listening with growing amazement. "Admiral, this was really a test?" "Commander, your people were among the first to join the Galactic Defense Corps. Your reactions are well documented. Strong, predictable, honorable. But the human," she gestured at Marcus. "The humans are something new." The Admiral stopped in front of Marcus. With her height and forearms, she was an imposing figure. But Marcus met her gaze without flinching. "Cadet Chen, do you understand why this test was necessary?" Marcus thought for a moment. "To see how we handle stress and authority, Admiral?" "Correct. But there is more." Admiral Cathara's voice became more serious. "There is a threat coming. Something that has destroyed 17 star systems already. Something that our traditional methods cannot stop." The hall became very quiet. This was new information. "The enemy is called the Devourers," the Admiral continued. "They are not biological. They are machines. Artificial intelligence that consumes entire worlds for resources. They have no emotions, no fear, no pride." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "Every battle we have fought against them has been lost," the Admiral said. "Every strategy we have tried has failed. They do not respond to intimidation. They cannot be bargained with. They learn from every encounter and adapt." She turned to address the entire hall. "Traditional military thinking is based on psychology, on understanding how your enemy thinks and feels. But the Devourers do not think like biological creatures. They are pure logic and efficiency." The Admiral looked back at Marcus. "Your response today suggests that humans might think differently than other species. Differently enough to find new ways to fight an enemy that cannot be fought traditionally." Marcus realized what she was saying. "You want to study us?" "I want to learn from you," the Admiral corrected. "The Devourers are moving toward the core worlds. They will reach populated systems within 2 years. We need new strategies. New ways of thinking." Commander Thexvar stepped forward. His anger seemed to have faded into something else. "Admiral, if I may ask, my homeworld was one of the first planets the Devourers attacked." The Admiral nodded sadly. "Yes, Commander. The Corvani fought bravely, but bravery was not enough against an enemy that feels no fear." The reptilian officer looked at Marcus with new eyes. You think the humans might find a way to fight them? I think, the Admiral said slowly, that a species which responds to intimidation with humor might find ways to confuse and frustrate an enemy that operates on pure logic. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. What do you need us to do, Admiral? First, you need to finish your training. All of you. She gestured to include the other human cadets. But your training will be different now. We will be studying your methods as much as teaching you ours. The Admiral turned to Commander Thexvar. Commander, I am assigning you to work directly with the human cadets. Learn their ways of thinking. Help us understand how their minds work. The commander's yellow eyes met Marcus's. There was no longer anger there. Instead, there was something that might have been curiosity. It will be my honor, Admiral, Commander Thexvar said. Marcus looked around the hall at all the alien faces watching him. Centauri, Vextyril, and Corvani. All of them were looking at the humans like they were seeing something important. The pressure was enormous. An entire galaxy was depending on his species to find a way to fight an unbeatable enemy. Marcus touched his split lip and smiled again. It was still the same kind of smile that had confused the commander. Well, he said to Admiral Kethara, this should be interesting. 3 weeks had passed since the test in Formation Hall. Marcus Chen walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime with new purpose. Everything had changed after Admiral Kethara's revelation. The human cadets now had special training sessions. They worked with alien psychologists and military strategists. Everyone wanted to understand how human minds worked. Marcus felt like a bug under a microscope most days, but tonight was different. Tonight he had been called to the observation deck. The observation deck was at the top of the station. It had huge windows that showed the stars and planets nearby. Earth was visible as a small blue dot in the distance. Marcus often came here when he needed to think. He expected to find Admiral Kethara waiting for him. Instead, he found Commander Thexvar. The massive Corvani officer stood alone at the main window. His reptilian form was outlined against the stars. He was not wearing his armor tonight. Just a simple uniform. Without the metal plates and weapons, he looked smaller. More vulnerable, Marcus approached carefully. The relationship between him and the commander had been strange since the test. They worked together in training sessions. They were polite to each other. But there was still tension. Commander, Marcus said, you wanted to see me? Commander Thexvar did not turn around immediately. He kept looking out at the stars. Do you see that constellation there, Cadet Chen? The 7 bright stars in a line? Marcus looked where the commander was pointing. Yes, sir. That is where my homeworld used to be. Corvani Prime, the 3rd planet around the center star. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He had read about the Devourer attacks, but hearing it from someone who lived through it was different. It was a beautiful world, the commander continued. His voice was softer than Marcus had ever heard it. Red mountains, purple oceans, cities that reached toward the sky like metal trees. The commander finally turned to face Marcus. His yellow eyes looked tired. I was not always stationed here, Cadet Chen. 3 years ago, I was a ground commander on Corvani Prime. I led the planetary defense forces. Marcus remained silent. He could tell this was important. When the Devourers came, we were ready, Commander Thexvar said. We had the finest military in our sector. Our soldiers were brave. Our weapons were powerful. Our tactics were proven in dozens of conflicts. The commander walked to a chair and sat down heavily. It was the first time Marcus had ever seen him sit in the presence of a cadet. We fought with honor. We followed every rule of warfare. We used intimidation and shows of force. We tried to establish dominance over the battlefield. The commander's voice became bitter. All the things that had worked against biological enemies. Marcus took a step closer. What happened? They ignored everything, the commander said simply. Our war cries meant nothing to them. Our displays of strength were irrelevant. They had no fear to exploit, no pride to wound, no emotions to manipulate. The reptilian officer put his head in his hands. It was a gesture of defeat that looked wrong on such a large, powerful being. We lost 90% of our population in 6 days. The machines consumed our cities for raw materials. They turned our own weapons against us. They learned our tactics and improved them. Marcus felt a chill. 6 days to destroy an entire civilization. I escaped with 2 transport ships full of refugees, the commander continued. Less than 3,000 survivors out of 8 billion people. That is what honor and traditional tactics got us against the Devourers. The observation deck was very quiet. Only the soft hum of the station's life support systems could be heard. Commander Thexvar looked up at Marcus. His yellow eyes were wet. Marcus had not known that Corvani could cry. For 3 years I have tried to forget. I threw myself into military training. I became harder on cadets. I convinced myself that if soldiers were just strong enough, disciplined enough, traditional enough, we could win. The commander stood up slowly. He was still much larger than Marcus, but somehow he seemed smaller than before. Then you came along, he said. You and your impossible human responses. Marcus did not know what to say. This was not the same arrogant officer who had struck him 3 weeks ago. Cadet Chen, the commander said, and his voice was starting to shake. I have been thinking about what happened in Formation Hall, about how you responded to my strike. The reptilian officer took a step closer to Marcus. You did something I have never seen before. When I tried to dominate you, you made me question myself. When I tried to intimidate you, you became more confident. When I hit you, he paused. When I hit you, you smiled. Marcus remained at attention, but he was listening carefully. The Devourers operate on pure logic, the commander continued. They expect predictable responses. They calculate the most efficient ways to defeat traditional military thinking. But your response was not traditional. It was not logical. It was not predictable. Commander Thexvar moved to the window again. He looked out at the stars where his homeworld used to be. I have spent 3 years blaming myself for the fall of Corvani Prime. 3 years wondering if I could have done something different. 3 years knowing that traditional methods failed completely. The commander turned back to Marcus, and then something impossible happened. The massive Corvani officer dropped to one knee. Marcus's eyes went wide. In galactic military culture, kneeling was a sign of complete submission. Officers never knelt before cadets, ever. Commander, Marcus said quickly. You don't need to— Yes, I do, the commander interrupted. His voice was rough with emotion. Human, I was wrong about your species. I was wrong about everything. Commander Thexvar looked up at Marcus from his kneeling position. The proud reptilian warrior was humbling himself before a 20-year-old human cadet. I beg you, the commander said, and his voice cracked. I beg you to teach us. Teach us to fight like humans. Teach us to laugh at death. Teach us to mock our enemies. Teach us to find strength in what should be weakness. Marcus felt overwhelmed. This was not what he had expected when he came to the observation deck. Your species may be the only hope for stopping the Devourers before they reach the core worlds. The commander continued. Before they destroy what is left of the galaxy. The reptilian officer's hands were shaking. I failed my people once because I fought with honor against an enemy that had no concept of honor. I cannot fail the rest of the galaxy the same way. Marcus looked down at the kneeling commander. This proud, powerful being was begging him for help. The weight of it was crushing. Please, Commander Thexvar whispered, teach us to be a little more human. Marcus felt something change inside him. This was not about him anymore. This was not about passing tests or proving himself. This was about survival. The survival of entire civilizations. Marcus reached down and put his hand on the commander's shoulder. The reptilian skin was warm and rough under his palm. Sir, Marcus said gently, with respect, you don't need to beg. You just need to learn to be a little more stubborn, a little more crazy, and a lot more willing to break the rules. Commander Thexvar looked up at him with hope in his yellow eyes. Can you teach us that? Marcus smiled. It was the same smile that had confused the commander 3 weeks ago. But now the commander understood what it meant. It meant that humans did not give up. Ever, sir, Marcus said. We're going to teach you things that will make the Devourers wish they had picked on someone their own size. 3 months had passed since Commander Thexvar knelt before Marcus Chen on the observation deck. Today, everything they had worked for would be tested. Lieutenant Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the GDC Resilience, watching the tactical display. He had been promoted after the Academy developed the new human combat doctrine. The promotion felt strange, but Admiral Cathara said leadership came naturally to his species. Contact in 30 seconds, reported the Zenthari communications officer. Her forearms moved quickly over her control panel. Marcus looked around the bridge. It was not like the neat, organized command centers he had trained in. Cables ran everywhere. Extra monitors had been mounted on walls. Coffee cups and snack wrappers were scattered around workstations. It looked chaotic. It was supposed to look chaotic. "All ships, this is Resilience," Marcus said into his headset. "Remember, we're not trying to look professional today. We're trying to look unpredictable." Commander Thexvar stood beside Marcus at the tactical station. The reptilian officer had changed greatly in 3 months. He no longer wore polished armor. Instead, he had painted his scales with bright human war paint. Red and blue stripes ran down his arms. It looked ridiculous on a Corvani. That was the point. "Devourer fleet emerging from hyperspace," the sensors officer announced. On the main screen, space itself seemed to tear open. Dark shapes poured through the rip in reality. The Devourer ships were massive, angular things that looked like they had been grown rather than built. Biomechanical arms stretched out from their hulls. Weapons glowed with sickly green light. 67 ships, the tactical officer reported. Same as the projections. Marcus felt his heart racing, but he kept his voice calm. "They're expecting to fight the Galactic Defense Corps. Instead, they get to fight something new." The Devourer fleet formed into a perfect geometric pattern. They always did. Their movements were precise, calculated, efficient. They approached Kepler Station like a machine designed for one purpose: consumption. "Open channel to all human vessels," Marcus ordered. The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." Marcus grinned. "Attention all human crews. You know what to do. Let's show these tin cans what crazy looks like." What happened next would have horrified traditional military commanders. The human ships broke formation immediately, not in retreat but in seemingly random directions. Some ships flew straight up. Others dove down. A few actually flew directly toward the Devourer fleet before veering away at the last second. On the Devourer command ship, artificial intelligences tried to calculate the human strategy. They had fought biological species before. They knew how to predict movement patterns based on logic and survival instincts. But the humans were not, following any logic they could understand. "This is Captain Rodriguez on the Defiant," came a voice over the radio. "Anyone want to bet I can make that big ugly ship chase me in circles?" "You're on," replied Captain Park from the Stubborn. "Loser buys drinks when we get home." The Devourer fleet tried to adapt to the chaotic human movements. They spread out to cover more space. They calculated intercept courses. They prepared to eliminate the humans efficiently. Then the humans started talking to them. "Hey, machine heads," Captain Rodriguez broadcast on all frequencies. "Is that the best you can do? My grandmother's wheelchair moves faster than your ships." The Devourers had never experienced psychological warfare before. They did not understand the purpose of insults. They tried to process the communications for tactical value and found none. "Unknown vessels," came the mechanical response from the Devourer flagship. "Surrender your technology and biological materials for processing." "Resistance is inefficient," Marcus laughed out loud. "Did they just ask us to surrender?" "Commander Thexvar, did you hear that?" The painted Corvani officer grinned, showing all his sharp teeth. "I heard it, Lieutenant. Shall we give them our answer?" "All ships," Marcus announced. "Let's show them what human efficiency looks like." What followed was 3 hours of the most unconventional space battle in galactic history. Human ships performed maneuvers that made no tactical sense. They used damaged vessels as projectiles, ramming them into Devourer ships while the crews evacuated in escape pods. They turned retreats into flanking attacks. They used the enemy's own systematic thinking against them. When a Devourer ship would calculate the optimal position to intercept a human vessel, the humans would do something completely different. Not random, that would be inefficient, but creative in ways the machines could not predict. "Resilience, this is the Crazy Horse," came a transmission. "We've got 3 Devourer ships chasing us, requesting permission to do something really stupid." Marcus checked the tactical display. The Crazy Horse was being pursued by ships twice its size. "Define really stupid, Crazy Horse." "We want to fly straight at Kepler Station's shield generators and shut them off right as we pass through. Let the Devourers crash into the shields when they try to follow." Commander Thexvar's eyes went wide. "That is insane. If you miscalculate the timing by even 1 second, you will crash into the station." "Exactly," came the cheerful reply from Crazy Horse. "They'll never expect it because no sane being would try it." Marcus looked at the commander. The reptilian officer now had paint smeared on his face from wiping sweat. He looked terrifying and ridiculous at the same time. Permission granted, Crazy Horse. Try not to die. Sir, yes, sir. Crazy Horse out. The human ship dove straight toward the station at maximum speed. The 3 Devourer ships followed, calculating intercept courses. At the last possible second, the station's shields flickered off for exactly 2 seconds. Crazy Horse shot through the gap safely. The Devourer ships, unable to change course quickly enough, slammed into the reactivated shields and exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Kepler Station. This is Crazy Horse, 3 bogies down, and we only needed to change our pants a little bit. Marcus shook his head in amazement. That should not have worked. Commander Thexvar was staring at the tactical display. Lieutenant, we are winning. It was true. The Devourer fleet, which had never lost a battle, was being systematically destroyed by an enemy they could not understand. Every time they adapted to human tactics, the humans changed their approach completely. Devourer flagship is moving. To attack the station directly, the sensors officer reported. Marcus watched the massive biomechanical ship turn toward Kepler Station. It was easily 10 times the size of any human vessel. Its weapons could destroy the station in minutes. Commander, Marcus said, want to do something really crazy? Thaxvar's painted face split into a predatory grin. What did you have in mind? We board that ship. The commander's grin became even wider. That is the most human idea I have ever heard. 20 minutes later, Marcus and Commander Thexvar led a boarding party through the twisted corridors of the Devourer flagship. The biomechanical walls pulsed with alien energy. Strange machines moved through the darkness like metal spiders. This place gives me the creeps, muttered Sergeant Lopez, one of the human Marines. Good, Marcus replied, checking his weapon. If it creeps us out, imagine what our presence is doing to their systems. They fought their way through automated defenses toward the ship's central processing core. The Devourers had never dealt with boarding parties before. Their internal security was designed to repel other machines, not biological creatures with unpredictable tactics. When they reached the core chamber, Marcus and Thexvar stood before a massive computer brain that pulsed with green light. How do we shut it down? The commander asked. Marcus pulled out a small device. We don't shut it down. We give it something to think about. He attached the device to the main console. It was a human computer virus, but not the kind that destroyed data. This one was designed to be confusing. The virus filled the Devourer computer with human poetry, jokes, and philosophical questions. It asked the machine to calculate the meaning of life, the exact weight of sadness, and whether a hot dog was a sandwich. The central computer tried to process this information and find tactical value in it. The harder it tried, the more confused it became. Other Devourer ships linked to the flagship were also affected, creating a cascade of computational chaos. One by one, the remaining Devourer ships stopped moving as their artificial brains tried to understand why humans would joke while dying, or what possible strategic value could be found in a limerick about space battles. When Marcus and Commander Thexvar returned to the Resilience, they found the bridge celebrating. The Devourer fleet had been completely destroyed for the first time in over a century. Admiral Cathara's voice came over the communication system from the station. Congratulations, Lieutenant Chen. The human combat doctrine appears to be effective. Marcus looked around the bridge at his mixed crew of humans and aliens. They were all grinning, painted with war colors, and completely exhausted. Commander Thexvar put a large, scaly hand on Marcus's shoulder. Lieutenant Chen, I understand now why your people survived when so many others fell. You don't just fight to win. You fight to remain human while you win. Marcus grinned back at his friend. Blood from the battle was still fresh on his face, just like that first day in Formation Hall. Sir, he said, that's the most human compliment I've ever received.